Well, let's talk about the people's tax cuts because this is related. Clearly, for those that have been following this, you've seen the financial disclosure forms. I don't make $250,000. This isn't something I'm going to personally benefit from, but I will tell you this, that I've studied history, and you look at the stock market crash, when that occurred, 10 months after the stock market crash, unemployment was 6.5%. Okay? At the time, the President Hoover, he started building, constructing in D.C. He did a tariff that was punishing for us, but then he raised taxes twice on the upper brackets. And what happened is, in 1 year later, we went to 15% unemployment. In the year after that, we went to 25% unemployment. And guess what? Revenues went down. And FDR actually ran on the right. He ran as a deficit, as a guy who we thought we needed to balance the budget. I don't think it's a good idea. I think we need to sustain the people's tax cuts because, as I said, job number one is to grow the private sector economy. Because you know what? Things get easier to balance the budget when you're not paying out 10% in unemployment and you're gaining in more in revenues. Now, related is this issue here, and I've spoken to it, but the bill wasn't paid for. It just simply wasn't paid for. I gave you the analogy to explain why. It was quite a lot of angst in the school districts on how to make these decisions, and I know that it impacts 125 jobs, and you know, we pray for the families as they move through and look for other employment. But look, as Scott mentioned, this is necessary restructuring. It has to happen for the long term. And you're not going to get it by some episodic one-year fix. In fact, superintendents now are, indeed, as pointed out by Matt, they're actually looking to use it. The problem is they're up against the strings if they take it. Now, with regard to the future, absolutely we need to grow the economy. But the way to grow the economy is to listen to our small business owners. We need to remove the impediments to growth. That's how we're going to grow our economy. We're not going to grow it from Washington, D.C.
Thank you. I want to turn briefly to a question, a topic that they've both spoken on in the past, renewable energy. Certainly given this year's spill in the Gulf, global warming trends, and our collective appetite for petroleum products, few question our need to increase our production of energy from renewable resources. However, certainly as we've even seen regionally in New York, our national need for renewable resources sometimes conflicts with local interests who might be opposed to the construction of renewable resource facilities in their municipalities or even in their regions. How do you propose that we balance these competing interests of local home rule and opposition versus the national interest and even the national security need for greater production of energy from renewable resources?
Well, a couple things on this. First of all is that we are blessed. We're pretty well postured to do well on this score. You know, New York State, when you look east of the Rockies, we have more hydroelectricity power than any other state. But there's more untapped potential. We could do more on hydro. You look at nuclear power. We have 4 nuclear plants here in New York, and we can do more there. You know, particularly if you look at the possibility of expanding capacity, another reactor on some of these sites. These are 2 areas where I think that we can significantly improve our energy. And then also, we have startup companies right now in the 20th district that are wind and solar oriented. I think where these companies are profitable, we need to support them. What we don't want to do is end up supporting unprofitable, non-profitable endeavors like ethanol. I think that was a mistake. That impacted prices because of the consumption for it. It's ruined engines. And it just, quite frankly, doesn't work. So if you look at the range of possibilities of hydro, nuclear, wind, solar, gas, natural gas, all these things can help us as we look to move beyond fossil fuels. Look, the other thing is conservation. We can do more on the grid. When you look at the possibility of moving beyond copper wire in terms of our transmission lines. We've got some companies right here in Albany that are working on that. There's some tremendous promise there. So now you ask the question though, how do we then get the community behind this? I think leadership's important. Leadership's important. So in areas like when you talk wind, sometimes the community doesn't like it the way it looks. I remember when I was 12, and the first time I drank coffee, I didn't like the taste of coffee. I had acquired a taste for coffee. I think we need to find a new beauty, and recognize the fact that where we put wind up, we put the towers up, that's a beautiful thing, because it's helping us move beyond fossil, and I think leadership's going to make a difference on that score. So thank you very much for the opportunity to respond to that question.
Matt, thanks for this question. This is an area that we spend a lot of time talking because it's so critical. Everybody in this room knows we haven't had much of a national energy policy for the last 50 years. What it's been has been Let's import foreign oil from Saudi Arabia and Iran and Venezuela. And lately, the new strategy has been, then let's borrow money from the Chinese to pay for it. And it's crazy. We've got to move beyond that. We need a plan to move ourselves forward. And that means domestic production. It means energy independence. And I agree with Chris. We need nuclear power. This is an issue I fight with a lot of Democrats about because I think it's critical to clean energy and to domestic production. We need natural gas. We need wind, solar, and hydro. We are a leader in hydro. And we need to move forward with a plan to drive our economy in that direction. And New York has been a leader. We have cleaned up our power here in New York. The rest of the country needs to come along and do the same things that we've done. And we need to make investments in the next generation of technology. We've got the Saratoga Tech Energy Park just down the road here in Saratoga County. There are all kinds of great early stage companies there that are growing next generation technologies. My private sector experience when I was investing, the next thing we were going to do was raise an energy investment fund. And I was talking to a lot of these companies and looking at where were the growth opportunities. And New York is incredibly well positioned. So if we move forward with a policy that pushes, let's move away from the polluting, the coal that we've got right now that we've struggled with here with acid rain in the Northeast. Let's move away from that and move away to the kind of solutions that New York already has. We're going to be moving a step in the right direction. It's going to be good for America. We need to set up policies that incent this and encourage this for the long term. One of the problems with what we've done in this area is we've done a lot of short-term policies. You don't build a business based on short-term tax incentives. You need longer-term stable stuff. You can get project finance out of a short-term thing, but you're not going to build a business unless you know that incentive's going to be there for the next 5, 10, 12 years so that you can go out and do the hard work to build your business. That's the kind of leadership we need. That's why we need a national policy and get away from foreign oil financed by borrowing from the Chinese. It needs to be domestic.
Thank you. A couple more questions. I want to touch briefly on the war that we're fighting on two fronts, Iraq and Afghanistan. So certainly very few support long drawn-out commitments, especially of our troops. Many are also very cognizant of the investment that the United States has made, not only financial, but in personnel, the loss of troops and the sacrifice that many families have made in both wars. So a drawdown is currently in progress and to be expected. How do we balance that drawdown with the need to ensure that these fronts don't really become harbors for future terrorist and national security growth?
Sure, Matt, this is an incredibly important question. I serve on the House Armed Services Committee. We're responsible for setting the budget for the military and dealing with a lot of military issues. And these are tough, tough issues. Very glad that we're making some real progress in Iraq. We've seen a drawdown of 2/3 of the combat troops that we had there. People are coming home and we're getting into the position where the Iraqis are taking care of themselves, taking care of their own security. That's where we need to go. We're making good progress there. Afghanistan is a tougher picture. I support the President's efforts to stabilize the country and to make sure that Al-Qaeda does not have an opportunity to come back and reform terrorist training camps. We all know the attacks on 9/11, the World Trade Center, the Pentagon. These attackers trained and came from camps in Afghanistan. We pull out of Afghanistan tomorrow. I believe that the opportunity for the Taliban and Al-Qaeda to reform those kind of terrorist training camps is very real. I've traveled to Afghanistan. It's part of my job to understand and have as much information as I can to make decisions about this. I met with General McChrystal when he was in charge, and General Petraeus and Ambassador Eikenberry, and soldiers from the New York area that are serving over there, sailors, airmen, Marines, all of them, to understand what's going on. And it's a tough place. There's corruption in the Afghan government. There's problems with national stuff versus local stuff. It's tough terrain. It's not an easy battle, but it's one that I think is worth fighting. It's one that we need to make sure that we give our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines all the tools they need. That's our job on the Armed Services Committees, to make sure they have the funds for the equipment, the ammunition, the gear, everything they need to be successful in this mission, and to support them while they're doing that, and then to support them when they come back home. I think it's a battle that's worth fighting because we can't let Al-Qaeda come and reform and attack us from there, but it's not going to be easy, and I would be fooling anybody if I tried to tell you that it was. Nothing indicates that, but I think it's worth doing, and I'm supporting where the President is on this and what he's trying to do.